Very good morning, everybody. I and Luis will share the background as well as the objective and what have been done by Red Meat and Cattle Partnership since the beginning until now. And I would like to start with the easiest part of this, which is explaining the background as well as the objective and function of the cattle partnership. So in short, the history of cattle and red meat partnership dates back to July 2013 when the two leaders, then Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd and Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, announced the Indonesia-Australia Partnership on Food Security in Red Meat and Cattle Sector in Bogor, West Java. It was announced with an associated 60 million assistance packages or package fund provided by the Australian government. So then the two leaders shared their long vision. That is, if Indonesia and Australia could synergize the potentials and strengths in this particular industry, then we could be mutually beneficial from the improved what's so-called the joint competitiveness, as well as the improved prospect of the long-term trade and investment. So not only trade, but also investment as part of a globally competitive supply chains in this particular sector. So the partnerships underlines investment. And what kind of investment we are talking about here? We are talking about a long-term investment first, and we are not talking only about a one-way investment, like Australian investors investing in Indonesia, or the other way around, Indonesian investing in Australian market. What we are talking about is more than that, which is cross-border investment, where not only we expect Australian investment in Indonesia and Indonesian investment in Australia, but a joint venture between Indonesian and Australian industry investing in other countries, serving the global market, more particularly the Southeast Asia market. That's why the partnerships on the Indonesian side report to chairman of Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board as a leading minister from Indonesian side, whereas from the Australian side, the partnership report to the Minister of Agriculture and Water Resources. Why investment? First, because in terms of figure, realized investment figure in Indonesia in the last 5 years in this particular industry, consisting of, in general, production as well as processing, including abattoir, is very low. It's only about $75 million in the last 5 years. Secondly, if we look at the whole supply chain, consisting of starting from production, processing, distribution, and consumption, we have seen a lot of problems, issues, challenges. And we believe that investment can be a key solution to addressing these problems along the supply chains. For example, on the production side, we have a serious problem with low cattle population, for example, and with relatively poor production practices by smallholders. On the processing side, for example, we have issues in terms of quality of our abattoir. In addition to that, the number of modern abattoirs in Indonesia is very, very limited. On the logistic and distribution, the story is about inefficiencies there. We have relatively poor infrastructure in handling cattle, for example, at the port. We only have so far one dedicated vessels to transport cattle, and so on and so on. On the consumption side, for example, we have issue with the low per capita consumption, which is now more or less 2.6 kilogram per capita per year. And in addition to that, we also have problem with relatively high retail beef price. So cattle partnership basically was established to address these issues with the ultimate objectives, among other things, the increase in cattle population in Indonesia, much improved production practices, the increase in per capita consumption, and more affordable price to consumers. So certainly this partnership provide mutual benefits to both sides from working together, because we have been for long have a very good relationship in this, especially trading between Indonesia and Australia. And over time, both countries have built on commercial advantage, namely that Australian is believed to be more effective in producing and breeding cattle, while Indonesian side is more effective in feedlotting cattle and processing them. And because of that, we would like to learn more, for example, from the Australian industry on how to have a much efficient cattle breeding in Indonesia, and so on and so on. Next, the objective of this red meat and cattle partnership is very straightforward, but basically this partnership is an industry government body, because the membership consisting of representatives from the government agencies as well as from the industry. And its task is to provide strategic advice and recommendation to both leaders through respective leading ministers on priority areas. And since the beginning, we have decided that we will have 3 priority areas, which is first, production, or more particularly breeding, secondly, processing, and third, logistic and transportation. The membership from the Indonesian side consists of a representative from the investment board, and I'm representing the investment board, a representative from the Ministry of Trade. We have a Director General for Livestock and Animal Husbandry as a member, a representative from the Ministry of Trade. I should have said Ministry of Agriculture. We have a Director General for Livestock and Animal Husbandry. From the Ministry of Trade, we have Director General of International Trade, And from the Ministry of State-Owned Enterprise, we also have a deputy minister as a member. We also have a deputy coordinating minister of economic affairs as our members. From the industry side, we also have a representative from Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who is now here, and also from the association and from individual companies. So basically, this membership is a high-profile membership on both sides, and that's why partnership can be seen also as a high-profile dialogue platform. As I mentioned before, that the objectives are very straightforward, which is first to support the Indonesia's food security by improving the long-term sustainability, productivity, and competitiveness of these industries. And Indonesia defines food security as a condition in which the demand for food and nutrition in terms of quality, safety, diversity, and affordability is met sustainably and productively. The second objective is to strengthen Indonesia-Australia bilateral business, investment, and trade, and to support closer engagement with the red meat and cattle sector. The third objective is to support bilateral exchange of expertise, capacity building, and technical assistance. And the fourth objective is to build and improve understanding between government and industry, government and government agencies between the two countries, and industry to industry between the two countries. It is basically a dialogue platform. Since the beginning, we have agreed that in order to improve the profile and credibility with the industry and government, we need to have early harvest or quick wins. And we expect that the quick wins or early harvest can come from the three priority areas, which is breeding, processing, and logistic and transportation. On breeding, for example, we are now working on piloting. Basically, the objective is to identify the economically feasible investment model of cattle breeding in Indonesia, and the result is expected to improve the attractiveness of this industry to investors. A particular emphasis was also placed on the skill development and investment. So in addition to the three focus or priority areas, we also have this cross-sector program, which is skill development and capacity building program, which is now working relatively very well and will be elaborated later on. And lastly, as of October this year, approximately 17.5 Australian million had been expended on projects in the priority areas of development, which are breeding, processing, and logistic, and one cross-sector program, which is skill development and investment. I think I should stop here to give opportunity to the Australian co-chair to elaborate more on what we have been doing so far. I thank you very much.